Recording in progress.
Okay. Ani in Ibrisi itoch, behold, I am my covenant, my bris is with you. Vayisol av hamoin goyim, and you will be for a father of a multitude of nations. And this is something that Avram Avinu was given, this haftacha, this promise that he would be a father of a multitude of nations, was told to him when he was told and he was commanded to do the bris milah. Ani hini bris itach. You do it, you do Rabbeinu Zaken with Dvar Malchus zeh b'mayim b'shnas tavkuf samach beis. Hanit was b'sefer tavkuf samach beis chelak beis ubnus chacher gam b'ertorel admor samach tzedek. This is known, what the Alter Rebbe examines over here, in the Maimer entitled by this very same pasuk, and the Rebbe goes on the parentheses to say it's from the year Tavkuf Samach Beis. It's printed in the second volume of the Amorim of the year Tavkuf Samach Beis, and also another version of the same Maimer is printed in the Torah of the Samach Tzedek. HaKoisev, that over there he writes she'inyan zeshama admur hazaken mimoiroi harava magin nishmas ein. That this idea, this concept that we're discussing over here is something that Alter Rebbe heard from his teacher, the Mizritcher Magid. So the Alter Rebbe asks over there in that Maimer, Mao, Kesher, and Yonim, what's the connection of these two topics? When he will circumcise himself. So then it'll be, then he will be a father of a multitude of nations. And the point of the explanation that's explained in Amorim, corresponding to all the different versions, is Avram Avinu. As we know, Avram Avinu was the midah of kindness, like it's related in the Medrashim Chazal in a simple sense. It's not something you need Kabbalah or Chassidus to teach you, though there will be more about this in Kabbalah and Chassidus. So, in addition to the ideas that we have, Medrashim speak about the great Achnos Oirchem Avram Avinu had, and how he was suffering when he couldn't be Machnas Oirch, etc. This is especially emphasized in the inner aspect of the matters, or that Avram Avinu was connected to the midah of kindness. Like it's brought down the Medrash, in general, the Avos were a chariot to the divine. Specifically, so each one of the Avos had a different midah that they were a vehicle to, that they were a chariot to, that they were a channel for. Avram was a vehicle for the midas hachesed, like it's brought down in one of the early Kabbalah's form called Sefer HaBoyer, that the midah of chesed said before Hashem, it's from the days of Avram being on this earth. There was no need for my work to get done. In other words, for the midas hachesed to do his work, because Avram is serving in my place and doing what midas hachesed would be doing ordinarily. From the expression from the days that Avram Avinu was in the land, was in the earth, was on this world. Mashma, it's indicated from this. This is not just something that took place at 99 years old. Then Avram Avinu became something that supplanted and substituted the midas hachesed of above. It says the expression is from the days that Avram was on this land, on this earth. That means all of his life. Moving from this is understood, what was the idea of Avram? What was Avram about? Drawing down the chesed of above. This is not like something new that was added to his personality and what he was about. Afterwards, he worked his way up to it. This was his entire being. So now, based on this, since there was a chesed of above being drawn down into this world, for this reason, at the time of Avram Avinu, and to a certain degree, as we'll soon see, even before Avram, there was able to descend very high neshamas also to the nations of the world. Because the way the chesed comes down is through the sphere of Yisoid. Since Avram Avinu was not yet have a bris, and the orla covering was not removed from the Yisoid, which in the physical person is removing the orla me'aver from that organ, from the organ where we make the bris milah on. So the orla is associated with klippas, with the nations of the world. Chesed comes via Yisoid. Chesed is nishpa through this aver. So as long as the orla is there, the chesed can come there as well. Therefore, the kindness comes down even in those that are connected with the level of Arla. Who are those that are connected with the level of Arla? That's the nations of the world. And therefore, it was possible for great neshamas to come down even into the nations of the world, even until there was the bris milah. But once there was the bris milah, so then it cut off the Arla, it cut off the Klippa, cut off the nations of the world, and the Chesed, meaning the Hashpahs of the great Neshamas, that could not come down anymore to Umas HaOlam. But prior to that mitzvah, prior to the removal of the Arla, even great people, even Umas HaOlam could also have that as well. Let's see a little bit, before we turn the page, what he brings from Derech Mitzisecha on the left side of the commentary. Let's see the commentary on the left side, the Bir B'derech Efsher, line 66, that he brings from the Derech Mitzisecha. He says, K'moisha Arla mechas al bris kodesh, just like the Arla covers over the holy bris, Kach, top of the next page, page Vav, to the commentary on the right side of the page, line 1 of the commentary, Malimim la'or kedush Hashem. So too, the Arla covers over as well the light of the holiness of Hashem, Hamachayas ha'olamus, that the light of Hashem's holiness gives life and vitality to the world. Hanishpas mimidas yisoid toiv elyon. The yisoid, which we know, so yisoid has to do with the level of toiv. Toiv has to do, teva toiv lahetiv, toiv has to do with hashpah, just like the midas hayisoid is about hashpah. That's also why tzaddik is called toiv, because tzaddik yisoid oilam, because yisoid has to do with toiv. And therefore, when they get that chayis from the yisoid, because the arla has not yet been removed, and therefore the klippas are also able to get the chayis. When klippas get chayis from Hashem, then it gives them more energy to be klippaized. And because of that chayis that they get from above, they make themselves as a yesh and a nifrid. Us, the nation of Hashem, who we are a part of Hashem, is His nation. We hold on to the Torah Hashem and then the letting be known the truth. That Hashem is the one that's the ruler of everything, and there's nothing besides Him. We were commanded to remove this arla and this concealment from upon us. And how do we do this? It's through removing the arla and the physical. That is this covering of the klippa. V'avarosim a bris kodesh, and it has to be removed from the bris kodesh and memenu toitzois chaim, the organ that has to do with the bris. That is the source from which life comes out, the procreation and so on. So over there, he's not talking about the nations of the world receiving the chayes from the Orla. But the point is that before Avraham Avinu had the mitzvah of the Bris Milah, the nations received from the kindness of above. And only when Avraham Avinu had the Orla removed, so then it was possible for the nations of the world not to receive these high neshamas like they received before. And now the Rebbe, we're going to go into the text of the Maimer itself, in the center of the page, line 1. To explain the matter why before the Bris Milah there was the drawing down of these high neshamas, great tzaddikim, also to the nations of the world. Maybe benusach echad ma'aseh maimer, he brings in one version of that maimer. We said before that there are two versions, the one in Tavkuf Samach Beis and the one in the Oira Torah. So in the version in Tavkuf Samach Beis, he brings down Dugma Lazem Mr. Shalach, an example of this from Mr. Shalach, that Mr. Shalach was not Jewish. He was not considered part of Am Yisrael. He wasn't like even Avraham Avinu, that was Echad Hoya Avram, he was the first Jew. But still in all, he was a very big tzaddik. And the Rebbe now is going to elaborate on what the Alter Rebbe brings that example from Mr. Shalach, how great of a tzaddik Mr. Shalach was. Yesh Loimar, the Rebbe goes on to explain line 5, Sheb tzaddikim uflogim gufam, in great tzaddikim itself, harezu dugma maflia. This is a wondrous example. In addition to the fact that Mr. Shalach lived the greatest number of years in the whole Torah, he was the longest living human being. That length of days, that physical long life, that itself, the physical long life, indicates what type of great kindness of the Eibishter came down that sustained him for all those years. So in addition to that, the effect of Mr. Shalach was not just about himself, that he was a great tzaddik, but his tzidkus influenced also the members and the people of his generation. B'nei doira mabel, people that were eventually the generation of the flood. The people that were drowned in the flood were Rishoyim, were wicked. Where do we see the influence that Mr. Shalach had? Mr. Shalach, that Hashem delayed the Mabel during the 7 days of mourning of Mr. Shalach until those 7 days of mourning, the Mabel did not come down. Behind this means the Mabel, not just while Mr. Shalach was alive. Hashem would not bring down the Mabel, even after he passed away. On his behalf, the Mabel was delayed for 7 days, for the week of the Avelis. Though the state was in a situation where the situation was that the world was filled with thievery, etc. In an even worse way than the generation of the dispersion, because of the generation of the dispersion had unity amongst them, etc. Despite how terrible the generation of the flood was, the Mabel was delayed on Mr. Shalach's behalf for 7 days. So again, it shows what type of powerful tzaddik he was. The Rebbe says another thing. As we know, everything that takes place in this world takes place in the spiritual world. Just to give another example of waters, when we talk about That Hashem separated between the upper waters and the lower waters. We're talking also about a spiritual separation. And Chassidus, when it talks about the idea of Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea, talks about the sea of Malchus and Malchus Dein Sof, all of that opening up to have a revelation of godliness. The same thing the Rebbe says, that the lay of the Mabel, loy rak lamata, was not only down here below, elagam b'chol seder ishtalshlu, throughout the entire chain order descent of all the worlds. Shari Mabel hoya b'chol seder ishtalshlu, because the flood was throughout the entire seder ishtalshlu. Because again, everything in the physical realm has its equivalence and its corresponding level in the spiritual realm. So there was a flood in the spiritual sense in the spiritual worlds. In the commentary on the side, he says that means that there was the great flood of too much light that the world of Toyu couldn't handle. Be that as it may, we're not talking about just an event down here that Mr. Shelach delayed, but also through something that was taking place and going to take place throughout the entire Seder Ishtalshus. And then the Rebbe adds another point to how powerful the tzidkus of Mr. Shelach was. So he says in line 20, V'yisedim is even more so, the Cholzman ze shenisakiv had mabul v'gloloi, this entire time of the 7 days of mourning, that the Mabel was delayed in his, because of him, it was a state that if the Yidden would do tshuva, there would be rains of brach. As it says that even when Noach was going into the Teva, there was still a possibility if the people around him would have done tshuva, the rains that started to come down would have turned into rains of bracha. So that means all this 7 days was another 7-day possibility of transforming the Mabel from the negative into the positive, that Mr. Shelach was giving them an additional 7 days leeway because of his great tzidkus. Hainu tachlos hashlemus the bracha. The idea of rains of bracha is the idea of the ultimate level of bracha. It's not just stam bracha. Gishmei bracha shows on the levels of bracha in the ultimate way. Move on from all this is understood. How before Avram Avinu had the bris milah haya in neshamas hagvoyos, there was the idea of the high neshamas, and there was the drawing down of the kindness of above, also in the nations of the world, and one of the ways how it expressed itself is that you were able to have such a tzaddik of Mr. Shelach's caliber. So it goes on line 26. With this will be understood our initial question that we started asking, how is it, what's the connection that only after he became an Av Hamoin Goyim, only after the bris did he become an Av Hamoin Goyim. So he says, only after Avram became circumcised, did he come to be a father of a multitude of nations. The idea of being a father of a multitude of nations, that means he's a father, he rules over them. Meaning there is a distinction between him and the Goyim. They're not on the same level. Before the bris, type of page Zayin, since there was the drawing down of the kindness from above, and there was the even high neshamas gam legoyim lumas oilam, also to the nations of the world. So they also had chesed. So therefore, Avram did not have such a type of control over them, because true, of course, he was higher than the nations of the world around him, but it wasn't to such a extreme degree that he could be now pronounced their father. Between a father and a son, there's a big chasm, a gap. Only when Avram went through a bris milah, and the orla was separated from the bris. That's the level of yisoid. Meaning, the yisoid, as we said, is the channel through which the chesed comes down. Now through the bris milah, the nations of the world do not receive any more from the chesed of above, like Yidden do. As davken nifal inyan av hamoin goyim. There's I'm missing a letter base over there. That then specifically was affected the idea of being a father of a multitude of nations. That Avram was a father and a ruler over them. This is all explaining it in one, based on one meaning of what does it mean that Avram Avinu was Av Hamoin Goyim. There's another explanation in what it means that Avram Avinu was Av Hamoin Goyim. What is that idea? Line 9, Yesh Oid Pirish being an Av Hamoin Goyim, Shehu Av Legerim. What does it mean, the father of a multitude of nations? So the Rambam says in Hilchas Bikurim that Avram Avinu is considered a father for all converts. And so, again, the same question can be asked. What is it about the bris milah, that only following the bris, that's when he becomes a father for converts? And also this idea of the conversion comes about through the bris milah. And the mimer of that we spoke about before from the Alter Rebbe, it's explained. The din is bar leil that we explained before. The lifnei milah yardim neshamas gavoyes gam lumasoilum kanal. Before the bris milah, before Avram Avinu had the bris, high neshamas descended also to the nations of the world, like we said before. The idea of converting also did not exist before the bris milah. That's what it means, Av Hamoin Goyim. Only after Anizois Brisi Itoch, only once there's the bris milah, then there can be Av Hamoin Goyim, there can be gators. Before the bris milah, there can't be gators. How come? So the Rebbe says a very simple reason. Because before the bris milah, also by the nations of the world, there was also the idea of high neshamas. Therefore, they had no purpose, no cause, no reason to go through a gear, because they also had these levels. As opposed to after the bris milah, that the nations of the world became lower, that they were removed and separated, just like the orla was cut off from the channel of chesed that comes through Yisoid, so too the nations of the world were cut off and don't have that connection with the elevated levels. And therefore, therefore, that was a cause why the nations of the world had a desire and a will to convert. With this is explained the Maimer. Why we don't find a lot of converts from the Arabs? Because Yishmael was born before the bris, so he has a connection with that level of the higher neshamas that weren't yet removed from the goyim because the removal of the arla. Though also by him there's also the level of high neshamas. Avram, Yatzer Mani Yishmael, Avram, it came out from Yishmael. In other words, Yishmael, it relates to Avram. You don't find many converts from Yishmael, because Yishmael was born before this bris. As opposed to Esav, Yesh Yoser Gerim, there are more converts from Esav. he was born after the bris of Avram, so therefore he has no connection with these high neshamas. Though he has no high neshamas, but he still has an edgelim because he was born after the Arla was separated from the bris. Like it says, in Yitzchak, it'll be called to you seed. V'Yitzchak v'loy kol Yitzchak. In Yitzchak, meaning some of Yitzchak's offspring, and not all of Yitzchak's offspring, because Esav was born after the bris milah, and therefore he has no shaykhs with the high neshamas, and the only way to connect to Ruchnis is through the level of Gerus.